everybody, and welcome back to Base Paths and Brewskis. Today is the What Would I Do episode 7. Uh, the kind of basis of this episode is a little more free flowing. I did a little bit less research. This episode came out delayed. It was supposed to be out Friday. It's going to end up coming out Monday morning consecutively now. 7, 8, and 9 will be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and opening day obviously will be Thursday, so it'll lead right up to the season. Get a nice chunk of base paths and brewskis going up to that point. Just a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. What would I do? I just kind of had some topics I wanted to touch on. I would like to preface by saying that a lot of these topics I developed and kind of came up with talking points before some news broke on some things. So earlier in spring training, a lot of this stuff was more interesting, I guess to say. So I'd like to get that out there before I start and hop into this. But before we really start talking about some of the content today, let's look at the BP. Today we have the River West Stein non-alcoholic amber near beer. I believe Lakefront Brewery from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So nice hometown brewery. Let's give it a crack. And a first sip. That's good. Yeah, you can tell it's that amber beer. Very good. A little different from the IPAs I was having. A little bit more my palate of beer. So very good. Let's talk first about Willie Adamas. And like I said, storylines were different when I created this some of these topics. So and Devin Williams was the other to talk about. Now, the idea behind these two was whether or not to trade the two with Devin Williams, who I believe has 2 more years of team control. This is not the year to trade him. He's only going to get about half the season, I believe, with his stress fractures in his back. Obviously, something that's going to hinder a pitcher quite a bit. In my opinion, don't rush him back. Take your time with him. Yes, team control for 2 more years. He's a free agent in 2026. If you're going to deal him, I would say deal him, don't do him. Deal him next off season. I think that if he comes off a good year this year, getting a full year of a reliever will foster a pretty good return, kind of like what we saw with Corbin Burns. A half year rental for a guy, especially a guy who will probably throw, maximum 40 innings after that trade for you. The value drops quite a bit compared to if you have that guy the whole season. I know he had been linked to the Yankees, so that could potentially be a move in the offseason, sending him over there. They should have a lot of openings on that roster. The kind of one and done Yankees this year have a lot of dudes on expiring contracts. I think it's like a third or a half their team. I've somewhat become a bit of a Yankees aficionado listening to Talking Yanks. I was such a big fan of Talking Baseball. I ended up starting to listen to Talking Yanks more whenever I ran out of episodes to listen to. So kind of learned a little bit about them, and I know they were very interested in trading for Devin Williams, which it's not very easy for me to say trade him. He is my favorite player on the team. I think he's the most electrifying player to watch as a Brewer. He's been so consistent with us. Rookie of the year, 2-time reliever of the year, all stars. I mean, this dude's a stud. So it would suck to see him go. I just don't think that a team like Milwaukee can afford re-signing a closer like this, a bona fide closer, certified closer, whatever you want to call them. These dudes, I think that you can get a lot of value from trading them. And reliever is such a volatile position that it's hard to want to pay somebody so much who pitches, 50 to 70 innings a year. So moving on to Willie, I think that it's his time around the trade deadline. If he's having a halfway decent season, I think there's a couple different teams that could look into trading for him. If I had to guess, I would say someone like the Dodgers, just because I think that I think that the Dodgers will need a shortstop later in the season. I don't know if Mookie Betts at short is sustainable. And even if he is, if they're not getting production out of, um, say, like a Gavin Lux at second base or uh, Who they got in right field? Um, I know they have like Teoscar Hernandez, might be Jason Hayward playing right field. So if they, want Mookie back in the outfield, trade for a guy like Willie Adames, I can see that happening. Kind of wanted to pull up. Sorry, I have my other computer open with stats. If you can hear a little chirping in the background too, that's my parents' little puppy came to visit for the week, so she'll be up with us and she's hanging out with Charlotte, our B&B mascot. So if I'm looking at Team War, yeah, anyway, this is not good podcasting. I think that Willie Adames will go to a team like the Giants, definitely someone who's competing. Dodgers, he's on his last year of his deal. Potentially, like a Braves if Arcia isn't playing up to standard. They just traded Vaughn Grissom, so they kind of lost some of that depth up the middle. I don't see him going to like a Tampa just because he had such issue hitting there. I don't think that they would really necessarily be inviting him back, and I don't know if he'd want to go back. But I can also see if there's some kind of injury for a team like the Rangers, kind of a veteran heavy team like that who's going to be in the playoff hunt. So teams like that is kind of who I'd look at dealing him to. Don't want to see him go either, but again, I just don't think that we're going to re-sign him. So you have to get, as a team like the Brewers, with such a low budget, you have to grab value where you can. And I think that there will be a lot of value with Willie, with his fielding ability, his power ability, and just the importance of a good shortstop on a championship team. The outfield and the DH situation now. I'm kind of questioning how much Christian Yelich will play in the field. It seems the reports are coming out that, in the news, he wants to be playing the field more, but is there value there is my question. He's obviously our long-term signed guy, but I just think he should be DHing more personally for the team success. That allows you to get a fourth outfielder who has, more value in their glove potentially than their bat or their athleticism. So, that allows you to play a Mitchell, Churio, Frelick, potentially later in the season, Weimer kind of outfield trio with Yelich DHing. And I think this has a lot to do with where Joey Weimer is. Um, Obviously, he'll be starting the year in AAA, kind of like I predicted. So I don't think we'll be seeing, obviously, as much of Yelich in the DH spot to start the year, but I think later on we could see it. And just having a lefty bat at DH, letting him focus on hitting. I know that there's been times where, players will say that they prefer to be out in the field to be engaged in the game, which I totally understand where that can, where that comes into play. It's hard to sit around for 3 hours and stand up for, 5 total minutes and go up and hit that whole time. So I can see where that could be a little tough. But in my opinion, though, our outfield's in such a good spot. I've been reading more into Blake Perkins, who I kind of, in my opinion, on my outfield projection, I'll say it, I slept on him a little bit. I think that there was a lot of credit that I left out that I could have given to Blake Perkins in terms of his fielding ability, how consistent he's been, and kind of the fifth, sixth outfielder option he plays with the team. I think that doesn't get much better in the major leagues than Blake Perkins in terms of that value. However, I don't see him, making the opening day roster. I don't see him making a huge impact with the bat. And I think that if there are some nicks and bruises, as there will be inevitably throughout the season, I think we'll see Blake Perkins take some time at the majors and hopefully he can get that bat right and, allow his defense to kind of carry him through and help the team with the run prevention that we've focused on. But if I had to guess the starting outfield and DH for opening day right now, don't know who is pitching for the Mets. Let's take a look, actually. It's hard. I have two dogs surrounding me right now, so I'm kind of bouncing around on and off my second laptop to look at information without setting it on someone's tail or paw. So Love having my little puppies by me though. Jose Quintana is a left-handed pitcher, and that's the projected starter for the Mets. So I can see a starting lineup on opening day of Christian Yelich in left, Jackson Chourio in center, Sal Frelick in right field, even though he's a lefty, only having one righty in that trio. And then Gary Sanchez as our DH if he's healthy. I can see that. Otherwise, if Gary isn't playing, I can see potentially a Reese Hoskins stepping into DH. If he makes the team, a Jake Bowers. I believe is a lefty bat though, so I don't know as much about that. But I would guess a Gary Sanchez opening day DH spot. Freddie Peralta, he's our ace. This dude is a stud, and I think he needs to be extended. Um, we've passed on extending Burns and Woodruff. He is on signed through potentially 2026, which I'm sure the team will pick up those options. So he technically is only signed through this year, though, with options coming after this year, which I know the team will take. Let's look at what those options are actually looking like. But I mean, Freddie Peralta, I don't want to don't want to glaze him too much here, but I mean, he's so electric with the fastball he has, his kind of developing some command, his strikeout numbers. I think he's a slept on Cy Young candidate. And I I wanted to see this dude around for a while. I don't want to see a Burns and Woodruff situation happen again. But yes, so he has the club option for 2025 and 2026, 8 million each year. And 2026 is the year 30, age 30 season, excuse me. I can see a potential 2 or 3 year extension after that. That's what I'd like to see. I really like Freddie Peralta, and I obviously want to see him with the team longer. So that was kind of my little spiel on Freddie. I just want to see him on the team longer is really it. So now there's a big list of guys I wanted to talk about next. Abner Uribe. I titled this section "Future Everyday Guys slash Impact Players." So some of these guys might not be, your Willie Adamises, your Corbin Burns, type level players, but we always need those guys who come in and can fill up roles like a Wade Miley, or for a while Luis Arias came in, was solid. Rowdy Tellez had a year and a half of being pretty solid as a power hitting first baseman. But I think like Abner Uribe to me it falls in line to make him the next Devin Williams, to line him up as being that star closer for us for the next 4 to 5 years. And I think he'll get a lot of opportunity as a closer with Devin Williams' injury. So I'm curious to see, what he makes of that and how that works out. Take one more little drink of this River West, excuse me, Stein non-alcoholic amber near beer by Lakefront Brewery. Good. So, like I said, I think Uribe will get a ton of opportunities to step in and be that closer while Williams is gone. I'm excited to see that. Can't wait. Cannot wait for opening day coming this Thursday. I sadly have lab, a anatomy lab practical that day. So I'll kind of get to reward myself once that's done by coming home and watching the Brewers. Don't know if I'll catch the start of the game, but I'll be definitely loving sitting down Thursday night watching that game. So Jacob Mizorowski is the next guy I wanted to talk about. I know there's a lot of debate with him as to whether he'll end up being a reliever or a starter. I personally hope they continue him as a starter. I mean, the same kind of thing was going on with Corbin Burns. As he started his career, he came out of the bullpen, and eventually they stretched him out into being a starter, and well, look how that turned out. That worked out very well. I know the big concern with Mizorowski is his control, but I think with the stuff he has, he can afford being a little bit shaky with his control if he has that strikeout stuff. I mean, look at last year's Cy Young winner, Blake Snell. Let's just pull up his stats here quick. He huge strikeout guy, but also a huge walk guy. So I mean, he led their league in ERA plus with a 182. He had 11.7 strikeouts per nine, also five walks per nine, and he won the Cy Young. His first Cy Young year, 3.2 walks per nine with 11 strikeouts per nine. So, I mean, this dude, it's kind of the same deal of him walking people, striking people out. If we can get that from Jacob Mizrowski, I'd love to see him be a starter. Maybe if he only goes, 4 or 5 innings a start, I think we have the guys in the bullpen to be able to pick him up those last 4 to 5 innings of a game if he can go out there and shove for half the game. So it's kind of my little 2 cents on him. Robert Gasser, need to update his picture there. He's got some nice flow going on now. So the picture I have just for the YouTube video of him, he's got some pretty short hair and he's looking a lot more drippy now. So I like the long hair gas. I hope he can be a guy who steps in and starts for a while for us as a lefty starter. I'm sure he won't make I think he already was optioned um and sent to the minor league camp, but I think he can be a guy like an Aaron Ashby who is a solid left-hander, good starter. He's got some good stuff. I'm just gonna see if Baseball Savant has anything on Gasser. Oh, they have his updated long hair picture, and he's looking pretty sweet. Yeah, just kind of a strikeout dude. I mean, 166 strikeouts in 135.1 innings. That's, let's see. I mean, that's pretty good numbers. That's got to be around 11K per nine, so pretty solid for him. I hope he can really step in and be, just a stud lefty, maybe near the end of this year, maybe a Sal Frelick type thing where he steps in halfway through the year, kind of catches fire, and hopefully builds some momentum going into the next season. But I certainly see him being a starter. I don't think there's much debate with him, kind of like Mizrowski has. But there's another guy on this list who kind of is in Mizrowski's boat with potentially being a reliever for us. So we'll talk about that in a second. But Brock Wilken, I see him being kind of a first baseman for us. I know he's currently a third baseman. They're developing him as a third baseman, which I think is smart. There's not there's not many guys who go from playing first base over to third base. So if you can keep him at third base for a while, allow him to, learn that spot well, I think that'll be huge, honestly. So I'm excited to see him potentially step in as that everyday first baseman, maybe next season, uh, maybe halfway through next season or even the year after that. He's got some serious power. Let's take a look at his numbers here. Obviously, he ended up making it to double A last year, despite being drafted in the first round last year. In double A, he slugged 565 in 25 plate appearances. Uh, in rookie ball, he was crushing. He spent his most time with the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers over there in Appleton. He had an 865 OPS, got on base, crushed the ball. I mean, he looked like a really good hitter. Did strike out 32 times in 150 plate appearances, so yeah, that's like a 20%, not terrible, but if he can keep those strikeouts numbers down and keep his power, that'll be fantastic to see. And again, I think he'll be a kind of a long-term first baseman, potentially a, rotating in at third base guy, but I think we have the infield pretty covered. DL Hall was the guy I was referring to earlier, as another guy who has been a starter, but has also been a reliever in the major leagues. He came up with Baltimore as a starter, was kind of a top pitching prospect, and ended up, I don't want to say falling off, but he definitely had some struggles and ended up moving into the bullpen last year. He started one major league game in his career, but last year he had 18 games without a start, pitched 19 innings, 129 ERA plus. He was pretty solid. And I think he was an underrated piece of the Corbin Burns trade. I know the Brewers want to stretch him out. I have him predicted as a starter to start the year. I think I have him predicted at kind of as our number 4, number 5 starter. So that's where I see him, and I really hope to see, him take a leap and get comfortable in the blue and gold and show off what he's got. So He's a dude who can strike people out. Um, 12.5 and 10.9 strikeout per nine throughout his career, which averages to 11.5 in his 33 innings. So that's pretty awesome. And even if he is a long relief guy who, pitches 2, 3 innings at a time out of the bullpen or can be paired up with another starter potentially, he's the left-hander. Maybe we get like a Colin Ray who comes in, starts, 1 to 3 innings, goes around the order once and a half, and then we have DL Hall come in and throw that lefty at him the second time. That could be a really big advantage as well. So Hall through his spring training has been all right. 1.9 whip, not fantastic, but it's through 7 1/3. So not a ton of numbers on him, but I'm excited to see him. Tyler Black and Hefferson Caro, I believe is how you say that. He, these two guys, I think, are going to be big impact players in the field. Tyler Black, I know he's played third, second. He's moved and played a little first base. I think when he gets to the MLB, he'll be a dude who can plug and play at one of those spots. Good bat, powerful bat, athletic with his feet, obviously improving in the field, and I think he'll be up this year at some point. I'm super excited to see what he can bring to the table. Again, one of these young athletic dudes who I think if the team needs a spark at any point throughout the season, he's the guy you turn to. Again, I don't want to keep referencing Sal Frelick, but last year was just so exciting when he got called up, and I think it's going to be a similar kind of thing with Tyler Black. And last is Caro. Uh, Obviously, with William Contreras potentially being on the team for a while, he's got a lot of team control left, and I sure hope they extend him. I love William, but if they choose not to extend him, Jefferson Caro will be a guy who can sit on the bench for a year or two. Behind him, really develop in the minors. Such a young, talented catching prospect, and I hope that he can be a guy that steps in and is an everyday catcher for us at some point as well. Or, if there's a time where we're in need of a big trade, something the Brewers aren't typically doing, but if we, need a little needle mover in terms of trade value, Jefferson Caro is a guy who's always there as well. If, as we do have a William Contreras locked up for a while with team control. So the game today, I'm going to go a little bit different with my own Brewers Immaculate Grid. I'm a huge fan of Immaculate Grid. Not too great at it, honestly. I think I could use some work. Typically get around, seven, anywhere from 6 to 9 of the squares filled, and usually don't have a great rarity score. So if you have any tips on how to remember dudes, I'd love that. But this was the board I made on the top category. The top line, if you don't know how Immaculate Grid works, excuse me, let's go through that a bit. There's 9 squares. It's a 3 by 3 box, and each square has a vertical and horizontal, or a row and a um, column category. So the first row is played by shortstop, and so that would have to be matched with someone who's a Brewer for life, a multi-home run game player, and an all-star. So played shortstop minimum 1 game. Someone who was drafted or an international free agent for the Brewers. Again, the same categories: Brewer for life, multi-home run game, and all-star. And the last one was wore a number divisible by 5 for the team. So last episode's trivia was that Christian Yelich as a Brewer has always had an OPS plus, excuse me, over 100. The answer to that was true. He, even in his down years, still had OPS pluses above 100, which just goes to show that a down year for him was still a pretty decent year and at least league average. So let's look into what I did a little bit for my Brewers Immaculate Grid. We'll give you a couple seconds. If you want to screenshot it or do whatever, write down your picks for this Immaculate Grid. Go ahead and pause the YouTube video. If you're listening on Spotify, I'll be posting the Immaculate Grid to socials if you want to look at it there and kind of comment or figure out what you do in terms of your Immaculate Grid. But again, last episode's answer was true, and let's look into how I filled this out. So my Brewer for life that played shortstop, I kind of went the cheap route. I went with Bryce Terang. Brewer for life who was drafted or international free agent, I went with Devin Williams. someone who wore a number divisible by 5. I went with Garrett Mitchell, who wore the number 5 or is wearing the number 5, and he has only played for the Brewers. Guys with multi-home runs games who played shortstop, I have Willy Adames, multi-home run game, drafted or IFA by Milwaukee. I had Jonathan Lucroy. Tried to go off the get off the current player trend I was on there, kind of making it easy. Number divisible by 5 who played for the Brewers with a multi-home run game. Yasmani Grandal were number 20 for the Brewers and had a multi-home run game. Forget what year it was, maybe 2018. A guy who played shortstop was an all-star for the Brewers, J.J. Hardy. Guy who was an all-star who was drafted by Milwaukee, Ricky Weeks. And a guy who wore number divisible by 5 and was an all-star, Mike Cameron. He wore number 25, I believe, and was an all-star. So if you had the same as me, let me know in the comments if you had any different or out of the box guys that I wasn't thinking of. I went pretty basic, so get creative with this. You reach back into the past as far as you want. I'm interested to see some of the guys who fit these criterias. Again, for Spotify listeners, this will be posted on the socials, and guys on YouTube, if you want to comment or go to the socials as well and respond there, love to hear what you came up with. As always, our B&B beer request. If you have any beers you've been dying to try, have a go-to beer that I need to try, comment or reach out on any of the socials that I've listed below and mentioned now a couple times throughout this podcast, and tell me what I should drink next. So it'll be Easter a week from now, and I will be able to drink. So my first episode of summing up a series against the Mets, I will be most likely drinking a Coors Light. It's my go-to beer. So anything after that, though, I'm super excited to hear what you guys have to request. But with that being said, let's get the last sip of this fine River West Stein Amber Near beer, non-alcoholic beer from Lakefront Brewery in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Go check them out. Ooh, nice. And with that, the beer is gone. The podcast is done. Thank you guys. Have a good one.